Hello, readers. Welcome to reading class with me, Miss Taylor. I'm glad you're here. So, this is a very exciting day because we are going to start reading about knights and castles to help us kind of build some background knowledge about the King Arthur stories. So, for today, you will need your Knights and Castles book, and you will also need your Tales of King Arthur Student Activity Packet, Part 1. All right, and there is a spot for you to write your name here, so that would be a prudent idea for us to write our name on the top. Here we go. And I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be working on, even though we're not reading King Arthur yet, we are going to do one page. We're going to do the very first page in this packet. And this says reading is thinking. And we know that reading is thinking, don't we? We're looking at page number 1. And on page number 1, it is talking about something called schema. Let's see. Strategy, focus, build schema. And you'll notice there's a picture of a brain, someone, and then their brain is like, oh, your brain is working. Before reading, thoughtful readers build schema or background knowledge about a topic. That means they look for information about the topic from other books, articles, movies, or people. Building schema helps us create connections and make sense of new information. So we can think about schema as everything we know about something. It's kind of like all the stuff that's in our brain that we know about something. So before we start reading about King Arthur, it's helpful to kind of build some of that knowledge, build some of that background knowledge or schema about knights and castles. So, because the King Arthur stories have a lot to do with knights. So what we're going to do, it says directions. Read chapter 1 of Knights and Castles, this one, by Mary Pope Osborne. Oh, actually, it's by Will Osborne and Mary Pope Osborne. So they are married, and I think they're, there they are in the back. So you can see the authors of this book. And Mary Pope Osborne, as many of you know, is the author of all the Magic Treehouse series books, the fiction books. And these fact trackers is the nonfiction companion, the facts that we can learn about these things, about these topics. So we're going to read chapter 1 today. Then write a few facts you learned about the Middle Ages. The first fact is done for you. So interesting fact number 1 from chapter 1, the Middle Ages. The word medieval is Latin for middle age. So that is one fact that we're going to learn in chapter 1. So I kind of already gave you one fact. After we're finished reading, you're going to write 1, 2, 3 more facts about the Middle Ages. And then down here at the bottom, it says, how does building schema help you as a reader? So we talked about, let's see, building schema, kind of building our background knowledge about a topic. If we learn more about knights and castles, it's going to help the story of King Arthur to make more sense for us. And like it says here, building schema helps us create connections like, oh, I think I know, I think I read about that before. Or maybe, oh, I think I understand what that's about. Making little connections in our brains between facts and information, and make sense of new information. So that is how building schema helps us. So if you wanted to, you could even do that right now. You could write this sentence, building schema. If you don't want to do this now, you could do it after too. So building schema, and that's just a fancy word for kind of background knowledge about a topic. Building schema helps me as a reader. So remember, we're trying to use words from the question in our answer. Building schema helps me as a reader create connections and make sense of new information. Building schema helps me as a reader to create connections and make sense of new information. So it helps us understand and make sense of new information because then we have a little bit of more understanding about what's happening by building our schema. Okay, so we'll set this aside for a minute and let's take a look at knights and castles. So here we are. Here's our table of contents. So for today, we're going to read the Middle Ages, and then we're going to complete our page here, some facts about the Middle Ages. And then I'm going to have you also read chapter 2 on your own. So that's kind of what we're going to do for today. Ooh. Oh, and on this page, it kind of tells you a little bit about if you wanted to read the adventure story about the Magic Tree House. The matching one is The Night at Dawn. So, the Middle Ages. Imagine that it takes 20 years to build your house. You need thousands of workers to build it. You need hundreds of servants to run it. You need a small army of armored men to protect it. Welcome to the time of knights and castles. We often read about make-believe castles in fairy tales and legends. The real castles that are most like the ones in fairy tales were built in Europe during the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages began about 450 AD. They lasted for over 1,000 years. This period of history is called the Middle Ages because it was between ancient times and modern times. And if you were at Nova in first grade, you learned more about ancient times. And right now, we're kind of in the modern times. It is sometimes also called the medieval era. Medieval is Latin for middle age. Ooh, we can tell Magister Reynolds. We learned medieval means middle age. And also, that is one fact that is already here on our page. Ooh, and then Jack is telling us eyeglasses were invented in the Middle Ages. Good thing. Things are very blurry when I don't wear my glasses. And Annie is telling us a university is a school of higher learning. The Middle Ages were a time of great change in Europe. More people learned to read and write. The first universities were built. New kinds of painting and poetry were created. The Middle Ages were also a time of war and fighting. People fought with each other about religion. They fought about who should marry who. Mostly, they fought about land. During the Middle Ages, nearly all the land in Europe belonged to kings. Each king's land was called his kingdom. Ooh, we learned about this in history. Remember what that whole system is called when the king owns all the land, gives some to his knights? A system called feudalism raised England's king to new heights. Yeah, feudalism. Most kingdoms were too big for a king to defend without help. So a king often turned over pieces of his kingdom to men he trusted. These men were called barons. The pieces of land were called fiefs, or manors. And this is a famous battle, the Battle of Agincourt, 1415. A baron didn't own his manor, but he ruled over all the people who lived and worked there. And he could build a castle on the manor for himself and his family. In return, a baron swore allegiance to the king. That meant he was willing to die to protect the king and the kingdom. The baron also promised to send soldiers to fight for the kingdom if it were attacked. These soldiers were called knights. Knights swore allegiance to the king and the baron. In return, knights were often given their own manors to rule over. Most of the people who actually worked on the land were called serfs. Serfs didn't rule over anyone. They had almost no rights at all. Serfs were allowed to farm a tiny bit of land. They were allowed to keep some of what they grew to feed their families. They had to give the rest to the lord who ruled over them. Does that seem fair and just? In return, most fiefs also worked in their lord's fields. Some worked in his household. Some even helped build the lord's castle. This system of trading the use of land for loyalty and work during the Middle Ages is called the feudal system. And there's the feudal system, otherwise known as feudalism. So it was like the king owned all the land, gave some to his barons, or kind of the noblemen, people at the top. And then the knights swore allegiance to the baron, and they were kind of like the soldiers. And then the serfs, like the poor people, who had to give up some of their land and crops, or some of their crops and anything they grew, to the barons. And they couldn't own land, but they were allowed to farm a little bit of it. All right, so let's see. Then we learn a little information about lords and ladies. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you read a little bit about lords and ladies on this page. But then what we're going to do is we are going to write a few more facts in our packet about things that we've learned from chapter 1. So like I said, the first one is done for you. Another one, let's see, we could look back and see what we read about. Well, let's choose something. We could say, we could use this fact. During the Middle Ages, nearly all the land in Europe belonged to kings. So we could write that as our interesting fact, and we could write that here. And then maybe, we could write about what happened when the baron swore allegiance to the king. So that meant he was willing to die to protect the king and the kingdom. Or we could write about how the soldiers were called knights. We could write about the people who worked the land were called serfs. Or we could even write down the order of the feudal system. All right, so what you're going to do is finish chapter 1. We just have a couple more pages. This is about lords and ladies. Oh, and the lords and ladies, they were called nobles. So we want to make sure to read that. And then you're going to finish page 1. So you're going to finish a few facts. And then after that, you're just going to read chapter 2 on your own. So chapter 2, these are kind of short chapters in here, is about the age of castles. So make sure you read that one. And it has lots of interesting information about castles. All right, so that is reading for today. Second graders, have a wonderful rest of your day. And, oh yeah, after you finish, take a picture so I can see your wonderful reading work. And I will see you again soon. Bye.